Wilkinson here. Today I'm going to interview a gay couple from Seattle. They're Airbnb guests in my home this week and super interesting. They're very cool guys, and I want you to hear a little bit of their story. Now, as a backdrop for this interview, I came out in midlife, very midlife. After I got divorced, I figured out I was gay. So for years, I belonged to a group called the Gay Fathers of Seattle, and that was midlife guys coming out, getting divorced. A lot of those guys damned the day that they got married. I'd never felt that way. I've got 3 sons, and how could I wish that they don't exist? That's impossible for me. However, I've had a bit of remorse over the years because I look at the 20-something guys who are totally comfortable with who they are, and they fall in love, and they have partners, and they get married, and that was so foreign to me back then. Now, I look at some of these guys and they come and they're Airbnb guests, or I have friends and they're in their mid-20s and, they're all happy and it's just normal for them. So I want to get a little bit of their perspective, and I'm going to talk to them today about it. Here we go. Well, hello, I'm here with Peter and Andrew from Seattle. They're my Airbnb guests. Really cool guys. I've fallen in love with them this week. So Andrew, say hi.
Hey there.
And Peter.
Hi there.
All right, one of the things I wanted to talk about was my generation versus your generation. All of us are gay, obviously, but I wanted to talk about what it's like nowadays compared to what it was like back in my day. So obviously, guys in my generation, a lot of them got married and they hid who they were. So just tell me a little bit about each of you. Tell me your backgrounds, a little bit about you, and either one of you can start.
Want to go first, Peter?
Yeah, well, I grew up in rural Montana, town of 3,000 people. So definitely like one of those stereotypical, no one really in my community to look up to. But so it was a little bit hard like growing up in that atmosphere, but found my way to Washington, a much more liberal state, and met Andrew in Seattle after like a month of living there. And we just instantly clicked, and we were really able to just live our best gay lives in Seattle. And
Cool. Good. Andrew, where are you from? What's up?
So I'm adopted from Russia, but I grew up in Wisconsin, so right around Milwaukee, if anyone knows where that is. So it's a pretty cool place. I mean, people are pretty understanding in Wisconsin, but once you leave the cities, it can get a little bit more conservative, and you kind of have to hide who you are a little more. And originally, before moving to Washington, I went to school in Utah, which actually was quite a culture shock. I didn't expect the conservative culture that kind of comes along with the Mormon Church in Salt Lake City. And then moving to Washington was definitely a breath of fresh air, and it was really nice to meet Peter and finally not have to wear so much sunscreen and chapped lips and things of that sort in Utah deserts. So.
And where did you actually meet?
We met at a bar called Witness. It's in Capitol Hill.
It's right on Broadway, kind of in the Capitol is like the gay part of Seattle, and so
right.
It's kind of a southern themed place and has rotating cocktails. And
is that the Jehovah's Witness bar?
Oh wait, I've always wondered.
I'm kidding.
I wonder though that you could put Jehovah's ahead of that.
That would be bad. Though I don't think they drink. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We really
delicious
clicked.
Drinks though. Like we each had like 3 drinks and talked for like.
Oh yeah.
I would say 2 hours just sitting there and walked around the park, and we were friends for a while at first, but then we realized after you spend more time at another's house, like you should probably just consolidate apartments and just live in one and make it work.
So that's the money saving aspect, huh?
I mean
that's the money saving. But also the love aspect. It's really just could not spend a night apart.
I mean, there was a moment. So I had a boss. We both moved to Washington, and we both started our first jobs out of college, undergrad, on the same day, and that was the same day as our first date at the Witness place in Seattle.
Right.
So it was a really good time, and we were explaining everything, and so the boss I had there knew about Peter from the very beginning, and so she heard all the background through the whole time as we were friends and everything. And there was one time where I remember I turned to her and I was like, I love him, and I just didn't know what else to
natural.
say. Yeah.
It just, everything fell into place, and we didn't think that we were ready at times, but it just kind of happened, and that's how you know.
So when you told her I love him, how long had you known him?
I'd say 4 or 5 months. What did you say?
Okay, so it wasn't like a week later.
No.
No, it took us a couple months.
Yeah.
There are things about each other that, I mean, we definitely are different in ways. And so I think we complement each other versus, duplicate each other, which is good for us.
Well, you definitely complement each other.
Yeah.
Well,
I've told you, as you've stayed here, it's been really fun watching you. You get along so well.
Oh,
Thanks.
In fact, the other day I asked, do you guys ever fight?
Oh, yes.
I mean, we do, like anyone,
It's how you recover, not
Okay,
if you
let's
fight
have
or
a
not.
fight. No, I'm just kidding.
Get out. No, I'm just
So how did your families take coming up?
Mine were not very accepting at first. I mean, it's a very evangelical Christian household that I grew up in. And yeah, I mean, it was some tough conversations, having to feel like I had to convince them that it was a phase. And then...
Wait, you tried to convince them it was a phase?
Oh, yeah. That was
Did
my
you
only
know
solution.
it was not a phase when you said
Yes,
it's a phase?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I knew that it was like more than that. I knew that I didn't like women. Like when you hit puberty and you realize, like, oh, yeah, okay. I was pretty confidently gay. I'm definitely a 6 on the Kinsey scale.
So you had to work their way into it, is what you're saying.
Yes. Well, I mean, I didn't lose my virginity until age 18 when I left
No, but
for
I mean
college.
with your
so-
folks. I mean, when you were saying it's a phase when you knew it wasn't, so you were kind of phasing them into it, right?
I suppose, but really it was me just trying to survive in their household, like until
Okay.
I could leave for college.
Okay.
They didn't understand, but my sister, luckily, who left for the East Coast for college and came back, like she had gay friends, and she was able to really help stabilize my family dynamic, I'd say.
She laid down the law.
She did. She's like, no, this is human. It's
Oh,
only human.
she told your parents that?
Yeah, she stood up for me.
So she was an advocate.
She was.
That's good. And she's not a lesbian.
No.
Oh, cool.
She lives in Austin. She's super cool. Very artsy.
Yeah.
Well, people from Austin are artsy and cool anyway.
Exactly.
Generally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, what about your family?
I think they knew when I got I think they knew when I was younger and I got a pink Barney guitar and a sequin mini skirt that had a flared tutu on the bottom, and I was, I think, 5 going on 6.
You chose that.
My mom chose it for me, but she knew I'd love it, and I loved it. And there's photos. There's like a photo, and there's like 3 or 4 copies stacked on top of it in one of our albums because I have all the copies, and it's me with that dress on as a little kid, strumming my Barney banjo. But I think they just knew, My mom was always like, yes, get a Barbie, get a Powerpuff Girl thing, My dad was like, yeah. My dad was always like, oh, I don't know. He wouldn't say anything like against it, but I think he was just like, oh, well, I don't know. Just he went with the assumption that I should be kind of straight, and that I don't know. There was kind of a disconnect between my parents, who are now divorced. Yeah, and I think so. My mom, when I came out, she had already been kind of hinting at me dating guys before that. So I was really nervous, but I just told her, and she was like, okay, I'm so thankful for you telling me that. But like we kind of already knew. And she apologized for that later because she knew that I had already been kind of hiding it, or at least attempting to hide it. So she didn't want to feel like she was ripping the carpet out from under me. Like, oh, we knew and you were failing at hiding it, kind of.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then when I told my father, he was like, oh, yeah. But kind of in a way that almost felt like it doesn't matter who you are, but it came off like I don't care at all. But it meant to be like, you can be anyone. But the way he verbalized it was more like, whoa, that's a lot, and hard to explain. He ended up coming around, and my mom's more invested, I think, in my relationship with Peter and stuff, and relationships ever. And my dad's just kind of not as interested, but that's sometimes the dynamic with parents.
And your parents have met the other guy?
So they've not met Peter, no.
So I've not met his dad.
Yeah,
I've
the
met
dad.
his stepdad and his mom.
Yes.
He's met my family multiple times, and they've actually really come around, and Andrew has been really great for, them getting used to what having a gay son is like. And
they're so sweet.
it's just lovely. We go for weekend trips in Montana and go skiing and visit them, and they've really come around. It's been
Have they
great.
brought up grandchildren? Any parents?
They have not.
They haven't, but your mother has definitely looked at me and we know that you guys are the first to do anything.
We might be the first to do something.
And that's what my
Catch
mom
us in
said
5
too.
years with some adopted
Yeah.
twins.
Really?
Yeah, both of our siblings are a little bit more quiet, I would say, comparatively. Like they are not super into like dating, finding someone, having
Right.
this. They're more like, oh, I don't need anyone right now.
Free spirits.
And our parents see that as, oh, they're not going to have kids. So they're always looking at us.
So you're thinking you would adopt versus surrogate,
Yes.
find a woman and a lesbian and
I think so. I
do
knew
the baster.
I've met. Well, yeah, I met a friend. I had a friend in Utah who was a gay couple, and they actually did do the whole, artificial insemination.
Right.
It was really expensive and very stressful because there was a whole involvement with another person and stuff. I think that there are so many kids out there that you might as well try to adopt, at least as long as that, if that's like the easiest option, start there and then move on.
Especially knowing because Andrew's adopted.
Why,
it
that's
does
what I
hit
was getting
close
to. Yeah.
home.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And I've always wanted to adopt, so it just happens to really coincide with what Andrew's always wanted, and I feel like that's good to be on the same page with raising children.
Yeah.
Would you want boys or girls?
It doesn't
Can't even
matter.
decide.
I don't
It
know.
really doesn't matter. They could be from anywhere in the world. Like
Yeah.
they could
I
be
think-
whatever gender. Like
Yeah, I mean, there was one moment where my father, just to be frank, he did say something in the car when we were kids. He said, I was already out. And he said, well, it's a real bummer we won't get to see your genetics in a kid. And I was like, huh. That's
not something we really care about.
not really something I care about. In the moment, it did hurt me, though. I was like, ooh, that was a little bit stingy. He didn't mean it that way. But he
Well,
just
maybe
was
he meant it the other way, though.
more like
Maybe
it
he
could be
meant
really
he'd
cool.
like to see who you would produce.
I think that, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's always the theme with my father is misinterpretations. He has his own way of kind of perceiving things, and a lot of the world applies to his own way, kind of. But whose dad isn't like that,
So, are you aware that where you are today is different from like my generation, for example?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
so.
Very different. And yeah, I don't even. I mean, it's a whole new world, really. And like my hardships are very insignificant compared to a lot of the, just strife that our community has been through in the past.
Right.
But we just haven't had that personal experience. But we've definitely heard a lot.
Yeah. I think we've kind of realized as we've gotten older, because I think when you're younger, they segregate by age a lot more.
Right.
It's just all about like 1 year is such a big difference between people. But once you get to a certain point, it really doesn't matter because we're all supporting each other and we're all part of one community.
Right.
And it's a community that's had a lot of fear in the community and a lot of loss in,
Right.
historically speaking. And I think that especially in places like Palm Springs, you feel more of the community because I think
Right.
people are more, they're more tend to come
They're
around each
aware
other.
of it. And
Yeah.
it's normalized. And I mean, we were actually saying this as we were walking around. Palm Springs feels like the world that we want to live in culturally in terms of a little
Oh,
bit
really?
more balance, like with our community and straights. And it's like a little bit more fluidity because I think that is the future.
Yeah, it almost feels
would
like
say.
all ages and all sexualities here in
Right.
Palm Springs. It's kind of cool. I mean, when we went on our hike, it's just like all walks of life,
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I was like, this is...
Did you hold hands on your hike? No.
A few times.
A few
Did
times,
you?
yeah.
I get a little sweaty, so I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it was hot out there, but yeah, and we kept having to move because it was a quick moving group of people around. So
You were trying to keep away from ahead of them or behind them or what?
both.
Yeah.
yeah, so and there were lots of kids. We did see some lizards too, which was fun.
Cool.
Yeah, some big ones. Like, I don't know, like 8 inches long,
Wow.
almost a foot.
Yeah,
That's cool.
it was pretty cool.
So your friends at home, mostly gay, mostly straight, what? Or are you both so involved with work
Well,
and school that
Yeah, I mean, I go to a school where 1 in 5 of us are LGBT. So,
what
Seattle,
school do you go to and what are you studying?
Seattle U School of Law. So, law school.
Gonna be a
Very
lawyer.
busy. Gonna be a lawyer.
All right.
Excited to have law school over with and start get a paycheck again. That'll be
And
nice.
just so everyone knows, I've been giving him Peter a list of things he's got to fix once he's a lawyer.
Oh yes, all the systemic change will
seriously.
happen.
And Andrew, what about you? What are you doing?
In terms of friends, so that's one of the interesting things about Seattle, is that it's been kind of hard to maintain friends. I know the pandemic kind of made it a little bit weird, but I moved to Seattle and then got really close to Peter. And when you start a relationship, it can be hard to venture out on your own. So back in the day, pre-pandemic, I worked in an office, so those were
Right.
a lot of my friends, and they were mostly straight men and women actually. Except for my bosses are usually these like kind of gay men, which is the funny thing. It's always the
Really?
manager. Managers in sales, yeah, are always these like nice, chatty, personable gay men, you know. Yeah. And then they hire all these other people, but everyone's been an ally, which is kind of cool. I'd say that
Well, that's cool.
in Seattle, like everyone's like, oh yeah, like it's like the back of their hand. Like gay culture like makes sense, you know. When you might get pushback in Utah, for example.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. A lot of girlfriends, I'd say. I don't know. What would you say about making gay friends in Seattle?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not in the clique, like, hard to join it.
It can be a little
say that.
difficult.
And what do they call that in Seattle?
The Seattle Freeze.
Yep.
I
Seattle
mean, it's
Freeze.
everywhere, no matter what
Really?
orientation you are. Like, there's just a general coldness in a way, which is why, like, it's so nice to come
Yeah.
here. Like, people are just warm and friendly.
They
And
smile.
yeah.
And they
It's a big
strike up
difference.
conversations. And I think it might be the sun, though. My theory is that people in Seattle might be, I mean, this is
Vitamin
generalization.
D deficient?
Yeah, maybe seasonally depressed. Seriously, you know?
Well,
and then,
yeah, that's
and they might be
common up
really
there.
smart and techy or whatever, but that still doesn't mean you're not going to be affected by the seasons. And, you
Right.
know? And then so you get these really smart people who are kind of just in a book or in their work, and then they don't socialize, and then it's just
Right.
hard to pull people out of their houses. Like, we host things all the time, and it's usually like girlfriends or...
Wait, you haven't invited me.
Oh, well, if you want, come to
Hello.
Seattle.
First till Seattle.
Oh, yeah. Well, but people, you know, a lot of people cancel and stuff, and it's hard to nail people down in Seattle.
Right.
Agreed.
Huh. Any final thoughts, words of wisdom for anybody that might be listening?
Live life to the fullest. Go on vacations to Palm Springs.
There you go.
I'd say live a balanced life and make sure to be who you want to be, because no one should judge you for who you want to be.
And just people can't see these two, but they've gotten a tan. They've been out in the sun all week, and they're sitting here in their bathing suits
Oh, yes.
doing this podcast. So thank you, boys. It was
Thank you.
fun.
Thank you, Wilkinson.
You're great.
Likewise.
Wilkinson here. Today I'm going to interview a gay couple from Seattle.